Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Scots Scheme with Macalester College football coach Tony Jennison. The Scots Scheme is a weekly program that gives you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the Scots coach questions about the Scots, football or sports in general, or just seek the coach's wisdom on a variety of subjects. This week, the coach talks to us a little bit about last week's game against Ripon. He also discusses the upcoming game against Beloit, and we learn a little bit about how he proposed to his wife. Interesting chemistry story for sure. So let's get right to the Scots Scheme. Okay, we want to welcome back Coach Jennison this week. So, Coach, let's first of all just begin with some team updates and injuries you'd like to share.
Once again, we're pretty banged up. We're banged up on the O-line. We're banged up on the D-line. We're banged up really at most positions on the team. So it's certainly concerning for us, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it. You have to be tough to play football, and it's a grind. You have to persevere, and that's what the Fighting Scots are going to do.
So let's talk about this last week's game. You had 8 of your starters out against Ripon, but really seemed to step up, especially after the first 2 possessions that they had. What were your impressions about the defensive scheme this weekend?
Our defense played great. Our coaches put our guys in good positions, and I think there always is an adjustment period to a triple option team because it's something you can't replicate during the week in practice. So when they get out there and it's live, that dive's hitting a little bit quicker than the scout team ran it, and the quarterback's on the edge a little bit quicker than you're prepared for, and that pitch is coming out pretty quick. So once our defense adjusted to the speed of things, they played great. Our defense, I was really impressed with their play. I thought certain guys on our team, certain young men, really had great games. I thought Fabian Arizon had arguably his best game of his career. Elliot Tannen continues to play at a high level. Glenn Hartford's always playing at a high level. Zach Hauser was dominant in the middle. It was nice to see Aaron Dimler step up and have a big sack on 4th down, a freshman defensive lineman. Forrest Redlin really played well in the secondary as well. And Alec Beatty showed up, and everybody saw what a great football player he is too. So, and I'm sure I'm missing a few guys, but I know Brett Graham had a really nice stop down on the goal line, stuffing the dive too. So I was really impressed with our defense. Our coaches worked really hard to implement the new scheme, and our defense played great. I thought they just played with great energy all day, great focus, great attention to detail. So I was really proud of them.
Let's talk about Alec Beatty for a moment. Did you just find yourself a new free safety this weekend?
That really wasn't ever the plan. The plan was for him to play quarterback, but unfortunately he got hurt in the Carleton week. Had a little nerve damage to his hand, hit a nerve in the elbow, and it prevented him from really gripping the football. And so it was hard for him to throw the ball, but we always wanted to keep him at the quarterback position because of how talented he is in terms of running the football and whatnot. So we've kind of had a little package with him where he's in there running the football, and we do some passes off of it. And with injuries that we've had at the safety position, we've needed people to step up kind of in our dime package where we bring in more defensive backs on the field. And Alec came to us early in the season, and basically the message was, I've got plenty of gas in the tank, so use me if you need me. I can help the team in other ways. And once the defensive coaches saw that and we needed some help in terms of defensive back, they grabbed him. And then with the adjustments this week to our defensive scheme, facing that Ripon's triple option offense, we kind of needed an extra safety on the field, so we used him in one package, and then pretty soon kind of turned into other packages that we were using him as well. And he has taken more reps at safety this week, but he's going to be a player that you're going to see on both sides of the football. We don't want to take away him from the quarterback position because I think he does add a unique element there, and he's also playing in the slot, playing some offense as a receiver right now too. So he's the type of young man that you're going to see all over the field, and he really proved last week, I said it before, that he's just a great football player. It doesn't matter what side of the ball he's on. He's going to play at a very high level and bring a spark to our team, no question about it.
The offense seemed a bit out of rhythm last weekend. What do you think needs to occur for them to kind of get on track?
I think we need to have more focus and attention to detail in practice. We need to be ready to go when we're out there. We need to be getting mental reps all the time. We need to take advantage of the time that we're on the practice field. We need to, get lined up and have more of a sense of urgency. And the great part about it is that Monday was arguably our best practice of the year. Our offense came out and really had a really focused practice where we were much more efficient, and that's the great part about our program. The young men care. They want to do better. They weren't satisfied. They weren't happy with the outcome. They know we're a better offensive team than that, and that we have more talent than what showed on Saturday. So they came to work this week with something to prove, and it's unfortunate that it takes that type of performance to get it out of them. And we talked about that after Monday's practice. I talked to them about being consistent all the time, whether it's your job or your marriage or football. That you can't only respond when times are tough. You need to be consistent even when times are good and whatnot. So hopefully they got the message. We have had 2 much better days of practice this week than we have in a while. And again, I credit the young men in our program. I credit our offensive staff too for sending that message and holding them accountable to have more attention to detail at practice and more focus and more energy, and to really take advantage of every opportunity.
Staying on the offense for a moment, and I don't mean to stir up some kind of quarterback controversy with you here, but Benny Goldman has looked good in the opportunities that he's had so far when he's come onto the field. Do you see that he might have a bigger role with the offense?
Yeah, we'll see. Benny's done a good job. He's done a good job throughout the course of the season. And when he has had opportunities, he has sparked our offense. So he's been taking I would say probably about the same number of reps, maybe a little bit more this week than he has. Christian's been taking a lot of reps as well. But I would not be surprised. Right now we're evaluating that, and we're giving both of those guys opportunities in practice to see who can really keep the offense going, to lead the team with a little bit more consistency. So we'll see what happens with it. I do think that our lack of execution on offense was not just a result of the quarterback position last Saturday. Both interceptions that Christian had, he was getting hit while he was delivering the ball, and there were times where he threw it spot on and we dropped the ball, and he missed some as well. So it was our lack of execution last Saturday was the result of many position groups not playing their best. It wasn't solely on one person, but definitely Benny has sparked our team when he's had opportunities. So we're going to continue to look at that situation and continue to evaluate it, and we'll see what happens with it.
Zach Hauser with 16 tackles this last weekend, already blown past his number from last season for total tackles just 5 games into the year. He seems to be playing at an entirely new level for you this year. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, Zach is doing well. He has a lot of talent. He's very hard to block, as people are finding out, and he seems to be playing with a little bit more chip on his shoulder. I know I talked about the word relentless before the last game, and that's what he was. I think he only missed, our defensive coaches told me he played, I think, all but 5 or 6 snaps the whole day, and you got to be a man down there because it's tough, especially facing that triple option offense where you're tackling and dive every single play, and you're getting two bodies on you most plays, or hitting a fullback who's coming downhill at a pretty high speed. It's not an easy thing to do, but Zach has great pride in our football program. He's a great leader, and he wants to see this team be successful, and he'll certainly do everything in his power, his ability to do that, and you're seeing that on the field. He's stepping up, saying, hey, hop on my back, I'll carry people if I need to. So yes, he is having a really strong season. He was first team all-conference last year, and he's playing better this year. So we need that to continue out of Zach, though, and I'm confident it will.
Looking at this week's game against Beloit, over the summer, they doubled their roster size with 34 new freshmen coming in this year, and 2-3 this year easily could have been 4-1. So tell me a little bit about what improvements you see from them.
They're better. They know their scheme's better. They've got a new quarterback in there who's talented. He really chucks the ball around really well. The one thing that impresses me most about Beloit, though, is the consistency with which they play. They are a team that always plays hard. It doesn't matter if they get down in a game or if it's early in the game, late in the game. They're very consistent. They constantly play hard. They run to the football on offense or defense. They swarm. They're physical. They play the way that I would always want Macalester teams to play, which we've been a little inconsistent at times. And they certainly are a team that if we do not play our best game, we will lose. There's no question about it because of how they play, how they approach the game. So I have a lot of respect for their coaching staff down there and what they've done. I mean, we had everything. We had our hands full with them last year, and we were fortunate to win the game down there. In fact, we were down at halftime and came back in the second half, made a few plays. But it's definitely going to be a challenge for us, and they're better this year. Their quarterback is talented, number 10. Again, I really like the way he throws the football. Number 35, their back, Dixon, I believe that's his last name, Mason Dixon. He's a load, and he hurt us last year. We had a hard time with him last year, and he's a year older and stronger and more mature this year. And they've got a couple receivers that really threaten you as well. So number 4 is one, and number 88 is all over the field and does a nice job for them. So among other guys that can hurt you. So it definitely poses a big challenge for us. So we're going to need to be on top of our game, and we're going to need to play physical. We're going to need to play consistent. Going to need to get some stops on defense, and we need to move the chains on offense. So it's a good challenge for us. They are a good football team, no question about it.
Let's talk about that offense of theirs for a moment. They were led primarily with the running game with Mason Dixon last season against you. Mm-hmm. This year they added Danny May at quarterback. They do have the 2 big wide receivers. How do you prepare for that?
I think we just have to be sound. We're going to throw a couple different looks at them. What we typically do, we're running base defense and bringing a little pressure here and there and stuff like that. But whatever you do, I think you need to be sound. You need to make sure that everybody works together, that if a ball does hit outside, you've got the pursuit coming, you've got someone to force it back to that pursuit, and that you're filling all the gaps in the middle, and in pass coverage, that each guy is taking care of his responsibility and not doing too much, that 2 guys aren't covering the same area of the field and whatnot. So we just need to be on the page. We need to be on the same page with one another. We need to execute well and really play team defense, but there's no magical cure for it because in this great game of football, whoever has the chalk last is going to win. So it's kind of a thing like that where a situation like that where you have to get a little bit lucky at times and hope that you have the right call at certain times, or hope that somebody steps up and makes a play. But they definitely pose some problems for us with their offense. And Marshall Mullenbach was in here the other day and was showing me that their quarterback, their running back, and one of their receivers are all ranked nationally in different statistical categories. So that's certainly a little concerning for us.
I'm curious, when you face a team like this that has a quality quarterback, a quality running game, a quality group of wide receivers, when you approach your defense during the week, do you talk to them about, does somebody individually need to step up for you, or do you just generally as a group say, okay, everybody's really got to play their assignment well?
I think it's the group. I don't think it's fair to say, certain position, inside linebacker or safety, you have to have the most amazing game of your life. I don't think that's true. I think everybody needs to be sound. They need to do their job, and if everybody does their job properly, we'll be good as a total defense. Because there's some plays where a safety is going to have to make a play, and we're really going to need him to do his job. It might be other times where the D-line needs to step up and make those plays, and the safeties aren't going to be involved in that play. And other times where it's the linebackers. So it's really just being sound and everyone doing their job and making sure we're on the same page, so that we are playing team defense and not individual defense.
Now, in your second year in the Midwest Conference, last year there seemed to be kind of a hierarchy of who was at the top of the conference and who was near the bottom. This year it looks like the entire conference has a group of incredibly good teams, especially in the North. So are you seeing that same kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all because of some of the hires that were made in the offseason. I've actually worked with the new St. Norbert coach, Dan McCarty, and the new Lawrence coach, Rob McCarthy. When I was a coach at Eau Claire, we were on the same staff. And when St. Norbert announced that Dan was hired and when Lawrence announced Rob was hired, I thought, wow, that's a really good hire for those schools. I was happy for Rob and Dan, but a little saddened for the Fighting Scots because I knew that they're going to make my life a little bit more challenging now. So thanks, Rob. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. But I figured that was going to happen because I've worked with those two before. They're quality coaches. They're going to be very good recruiters, and they're going to do well with those teams. Not to mention, Carroll's always very challenging. Ripon's very challenging with what they do, and we saw that last weekend. And again, the Beloit staff, I really think highly of Seth Dewar. I had an opportunity to spend some time with him after he was hired last year, and again, they gave us everything we could handle last year. And they only have 30 players on the team now. They've doubled the size of their roster and continuing to get better. So yes, I noticed it, and I'm not surprised. It's what I expected with the North Division, just given the who was returning in terms of the Carroll and Ripon with the continuity they've had, and then the changes that some of those other programs have made, and then obviously Beloit building up.
Well, you had to know you're in a bit of trouble when you're facing off against a coach whose name is Rob. So I just want to point that out for the record.
Never thought of it that way, but maybe you got a point.
Okay, our fan questions for this week start with Mike from Bloomington, who asks, do you feel your team is as hungry to win after having so much success last season?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. You like to hope so. I think that sometimes success builds a little bit of complacency, and I don't know that we had that or not. But sometimes people get a little bit hungry too. I think of our sophomore class and our sophomore class. A lot of those individuals didn't play a whole lot last year. They had roles on the team. It might be special teams, or it might be kind of rotating in certain past situations on defense, or maybe it wasn't much of a role at all. But they came back hungry because I think they got a taste of that. And so I think it can work both ways. I think that some people can get a taste of success and want more of it, and others can become complacent, and you certainly don't want that. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I think you'd probably have to talk to our players about that. I do feel as though that after the loss this weekend, our players are hungry. I think we've had two of our better days of practice since fall camp, and I think they're ready to go, or I think they will be ready to go when Saturday hits. So we're excited to get going again, to get past this last one from this past weekend that was a disappointment for us.
Jared from St. Paul asks, you've had a lot of guys that seem to be able to play many different positions. Does that make your job as a coach much easier?
I don't think so. I think when they have the ability to play many positions, it's harder, because then you have to think more about how you can use them in certain situations. It would be really easy for someone to come in and say, oh, he's a defensive lineman, just leave him there. Then there's no more thinking involved. But when you have a young man like Alec Beatty that can really help you at multiple positions, then you have to think a lot more about, okay, how can we use him here? What packages can we use him in this? On defensively, so he only has to learn certain things, because there's only so much practice time in a day, and there's only so much that someone can absorb mentally, that we certainly don't want to overload, especially a freshman right now, early in their career either. So in some ways, I think it's more challenging when you have people that can play many positions, but it's certainly a nice luxury to have, no question about it.
I would also think it's a little bit more challenging to decide which coach is going to get that player's time at a particular point.
Yes, because everybody wants that player's time during practice time.
Jacob from St. Paul asks, how hard is it to play defensive back? I would think it is difficult to try to keep covering some guy while still trying to watch what the quarterback is doing.
Well, it was really hard for me to play defensive back, I'll tell you that. again, I was a ham and egger as a defensive back. I wasn't terribly gifted. I think I worked hard at it, but I remember having lunch one time in college with a teammate of mine who was a linebacker, and he was saying defensive back's the hardest position to play because you have to be athletic enough to run with the speed guys, but you have to be physical enough to come up and be able to tackle people, and athletic enough to do it in space. And I remember that conversation stuck with me because I always felt like it was probably one of the easier positions to play because I see what the D-line and linebackers go through in terms of the physicality of everything. But I don't know. I think each position has its challenges, and that's the cool part about football. That's what I really love about football, is that all different body types, all different skill sets can be used on a football team and can add value to a football team. So certainly defensive back was a hard thing for me to do. Deion Sanders, Rod Woodson, I remember watching them when I was younger. They seemed to make it look pretty easy. So I'm not sure who you should believe there, Jacob.
Did you have a prime time high-stepping dance when you intercepted him fast?
Yeah, that was exactly my style. Not really, but I can't remember either. It's been too long ago.
If there was, I hope there's a video out there somewhere.
There is somewhere. You just got to know the right people.
Tom, the coach, asks, do you find it hard to relate to such a diverse group of players? You have guys that come from many diverse cultural backgrounds. Is that difficult to relate to each player?
I don't think so. And I think the reason is because we recruit young men who are exceptional people, who are serious about challenging themselves academically, but also passionate about football. And when we find young men like that, they're similar at the core. They may come from all corners of the country, and we have young men from 24 different states on our team, but they're similar at the core. And I think that when they are similar at the core, they respond similar ways in terms of when they hit adversity or when they face adversity, or they respond similarly in terms of their work ethic, their attitude. So I don't think it's hard to relate to a diverse group of players. Where I struggle with people that aren't motivated, people who don't want to do their very best at every opportunity. And so again, we try to find young men who are passionate about football, who are serious about their academics, who are really exceptional people in their personal lives, so that they want to do their very best at every opportunity. It just fits well with our coaching style.
Our last question for this week comes from Jenny from St. Paul, who says, I read that a man and woman got married during the mile 8 of the Chicago Marathon. How did you propose to your wife?
Wow, this is getting a little personal. Can I avoid this question, or?
That's up to you at this point.
Well, it's not that much of a story. Unfortunately, I didn't employ a charter jet and fly her off to somewhere very romantic. I met my wife in my first chemistry class at Wisconsin La Crosse in my first year there. I had actually transferred in from the University of Minnesota, and so I was a year older than her. She was a freshman at La Crosse, and I was, again, my first year at La Crosse, but it was my second year of college, and we happened to be lab partners, and we just got paired up strangely enough. The night I met her, I actually went home to my roommate and told her I met the woman I'm going to marry tonight, and lo and behold, I was right. She didn't date me for a couple of years. She wouldn't give me the time of day, but ultimately I went out in the end. I think I tricked her somehow. But when it was time to get engaged, we just went back to La Crosse, and we actually went back to that chemistry lab and kind of surprised her. I think she was still in shock when I asked her. I think it took her about 5 minutes to realize what was going on. I think she really wanted to say no, but she didn't have any better options at the time, so she got stuck with me.
You guys can truly say there was chemistry between you. How about that?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, Rob.
We want to thank Coach Jennison for joining us on the Scots Game this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Macalester coach, please send them to us at Tony Jennison at minorleaguesportsreport.com. That's Tony Jennison at minorleaguesportsreport.com. Please have your questions to us by Tuesday so that we can give the coach a little time to review them before we record our show on Wednesday afternoon. I want to thank you for joining us here this week. My name is Rob Paneer, and I'm the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we look forward to seeing you next week on the Scots Scheme.